Well, hello, everyone, and welcome once again to another episode of the 360 Experience podcast. I'm your host, Tim Braheem, and my conversation today is with a lady who I've gotten to know over the last year as a client, Katrinka Condie, and she is dynamic, she is heart-centered, and she is an extremely successful loan originator. And I think you're going to find out why in the episode today. I'm going to give you a little bit of a background on Katrinka. She's located in Salt Lake City, Utah, and she has been in the business for only 7 years. Check out these numbers. In her third year in the business, 2020, she did 189 loans for 68 million. In her fourth year in the business, 2021, she did 170 loans for 73 million. Those are some awfully impressive numbers for somebody who hasn't been doing it very long. And we're going to be talking today about some different topics than perhaps in previous episodes of the 360 Experience. One of the things that you're going to experience very early on is an unplugged, unplanned role play, where I'm going to share my personal situation as it relates to my home. And I'm going to have Katrinka guide me through how she speaks to a client. And in that conversation, you're going to hear the infusion of empathy. You're going to hear some outstanding open-ended questions that she's going to ask me. And you're going to see how she builds trust and rapport and why her success is so high. She's also incredibly well scripted. And you're going to hear some of those success scripts in this conversation. Later on in the conversation, we're going to talk about how she built her confidence from having the knowledge of the credit scoring model from a previous career that she was in, along with a whole bunch of other things that she's working on presently in her life and in her business. This promises to be a terrific conversation with Katrinka. As always, before we get to the show, I'd like to remind you that we thrive on subscribers. So if you've not subscribed to the 360 Experience, I would ask that you please do so on whatever your favorite podcast channel is. If you are watching this on YouTube, please make comments and give us some likes and forward it on to others. And the same holds true for Spotify, Apple, or Google Podcasts. Now, without further ado, my conversation, friends, with Katrinka Condie. Hey, Katrinka.
Howdy. How are you?
That's a very Utah welcome. Howdy. Good. Good morning.
I'm great.
So
can't discount where I'm from, right?
No, of course not. Of course not. Well, I mean, if we discounted where you're from, we would be dissing hard on my wife, who's from the same place. So
Correct.
So in the introduction, I talked a little bit about your production numbers, and that you've been in the business for 7 years only, and you've done some very impressive numbers in a short period of time. And you continue to, even in a challenging market. So I guess, first I just want to start. I know that you're humble, and I know that you're a grateful human being. And yet at the same time, I'd like to understand, from your perspective, why do you think that you've been as successful as you've been in the short period of time that you've been in the business?
I personally attribute it to the humanity of what I bring to the client experience personally. I can't really attribute it to being the best at guidelines or the best at sales, but I do believe that I'm the absolute best at connecting, building trust, bringing the human nature side to it. And I think it's why I have raving fans. And I do believe that human connection, the heart-to-heart connection that people truly get from me is what has them coming back, has them referring clients back to me. The interesting part is, even if I lose a loan, say they decide to go with someone else, the number of those clients that actually refer friends, colleagues to me, even when I didn't do their loans, says something about the connection that I make up front in education.
Wonderful. That's a great launching point for us. So you're really shedding the light on something that I think as a friend and client that I'm passionate about and teach myself, which is that this is a people business at the end of the day. And I think that we can forget that. It's really easy as originators to get caught up in the commission amount, the amount of basis points we're making, the loan size, how many deals we've done, all of that. And we can really tend to forget at the end of the day that this is about relationship and connection. And the originators that I know that are super successful, especially in this market, are the ones that actually have the deep relationships, the loyalty that comes with those deep relationships. It's interesting what you highlight. I'm going to ask you a question. I have a strong opinion about this, but why do you think that you then at times get referrals from people who you didn't end up doing a loan for, but yet they referred someone to you?
From the very first phone call that I have with somebody, I feel like getting people to open up to me as a human being, tell me what their fears are, what they're most excited about in buying a home, really understanding what their life goals are and what matters to them, immediately starts off that conversation feeling totally different than anyone else that they've talked to. So if they're shopping, I don't get to I don't talk numbers in that initial call. I educate, I connect, I just try to understand what matters to them. So right out of the gate, it already feels different. And helping them understand how to meet their goals in challenging markets and solutions that we have. So what's really important to me on that very first phone call, we call it our dreams and goals call, is building that connection so that they trust me as an expert, but I know what I'm talking about, and that I'm actually listening to what their goals are. So by the end of that conversation, one of the questions I ask, if they haven't already voiced it themselves somewhere along the lines of, wow, this has been really helpful, is I will ask them, did you learn something new that you hadn't learned before this conversation? How did that conversation play out, and how did it feel is what I'm looking for. And most of the time they're like, wow, that was really impactful. I learned more than I ever thought I would by just calling to find out what programs that you have.
See, that's a really beautiful frame up, because what I'm hearing you say is you're taking the emphasis off of the thing that most people enter the conversation fixated on, which is the rate and the fees, and you're putting the emphasis on the feeling and the experience and the learning. And that's brilliant. And I went about it a different way as an originator, but I had a similar philosophy and process, which was my job is to get the conversation moved away from the subject matter of interest rate and fees as quickly as possible in the onset of that interaction, and transcend it into value-driven dialogue that has the person leaving going, wow, I just learned something. So you're doing the same thing, but what I really liked was that added element of what's the feeling that they have. That's really important. So this is obviously a very organic conversation, as all of my podcast episodes are. So you can say no. And if you say no, that's okay. We're not going to be angry with you. But how would you feel? It's actually an interesting time for me. I am pondering selling my home and going on a bit of an adventure. And that adventure would be to not know where I'm going to move to, which is a little scary because I'm a routine-oriented human being like many of us are. And yet at the same time, I think it's that season of my life to open up the door to experiencing something that's unknown right now. How would you feel about you and I just ad-libbing and doing a little mock dreams and goals call right now, where I play consumer and you play you? And I'd love to just hear the questions that you would ask me, and then we could kind of debrief on it afterwards.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, great. So
I'm down.
All right, so let's get started. You can lead the dialogue.
Yeah. Hey Tim, how are you?
I'm good. I'm a little nervous, about my situation, but hopefully you'll help me clear some things up here.
Yeah, absolutely. So from the sum total of all I know about your goals so far is that you're about to embark on a new adventure. You're considering selling your house, but you really don't know what that next step is. Am I on the right track?
Yeah, I'm locked in at 2.625 on a 10-year fixed with 8 years left, and a property tax base that is, quite low compared to the existing value of the property because of how much things have gone up since I've bought the house 7 years ago. And everywhere I look, it's like the unilateral financial move is a big downgrade in the house and in the location. So yeah, it's a little bit confusing, but I feel like it's probably time for me to take the next step.
Well, that house is a great investment and it's obviously building you wealth. So what is the primary motivating factor that is launching you into this adventure? And
yeah,
really, what are your goals? Because there's more to life than just a loan and an asset. I mean, we got to live, we got to seek out our dreams. So what's really driving you?
I have an extraordinary amount of equity in this home. I'm probably at about a 15% loan to value, which is way too low. I don't really have the ability I could do a HELOC or something like that, or take out a new first, but then the rate would be astronomically high. So that doesn't make any sense. I feel vulnerable. I'm very blessed. I live on a hillside overlooking the ocean. You know, I can hear the waves when I go to bed at night. And yet it rains. It's been raining a lot here in Southern California the last couple of years. And every time it rains a lot, I get nervous. And location wise, it's a bit isolated. And I live, really right above Pacific Coast Highway. So there's a lot of traffic in the summertime. Kind of feels a little bit like I live above a freeway. And I miss being in a quiet neighborhood. I miss having a little bit more of a usable backyard. I miss being a little bit closer to activities, golf courses, things like that. It's been nice living here for the 4.5 years that I've lived here, but it's not the ideal circumstance, especially for when my wife and stepkids come to visit. I mean, it's fine when it's just Liz and I, but when my stepkids come, it's not a kid house. It's an adult house. I mean, look, the reality of it, Katrinka, is it's a bachelor pad. I mean, and I'm not a bachelor anymore. And when I bought it, it's a chick magnet pad. That's not my life anymore. So, yeah. So, but when I look to other areas, the areas I'm super spoiled, right? I mean, I lived in Southern California my whole life. I love the beach. I love the climate, but I also spent a lot of time in Costa Rica, and this house is empty a lot of the time. So it's a big amount of my net worth in this home that I use maybe 8 months out of the year. Feels somewhat impractical too. I know that I'm vomiting a lot on you right now, but those are kind of some of my circumstances.
It seems to me that you are somewhat emotionally attached to just having a lower interest rate on a mortgage, and you're a little bit fearful to get rid of that. But it also sounds like you need to potentially access the equity that you have in that home to take the next step in life. Yes? Am I on?
Yeah. Yeah. I think I'm emotionally getting to the point where I'm willing to give up the 2.625.
Have you considered keeping the property as an investment, or you have no interest in holding on to it? Do you actually want to use the equity?
I want to use the equity. I'm at an age in my life where I don't really want to have so much of my net worth in an equity in a home. I'd rather downsize a little bit, have a little bit less financial responsibilities. I mean, this house costs a lot of money to keep up. I mean, a plumber comes over and they see my house and they automatically triple the amount of the quote. It's like one of those things, where it's like, oh, well, this guy can afford it. Everything costs a lot. The gardener, everybody. So I want to simplify my life a little bit, I think.
Oh, I totally understand those goals. That's absolutely worthwhile. So what's your biggest fear in selling it then? What's holding you back?
Excellent question. That I won't like the next place that I move to as much as I like this house. Okay,
that's fair. But it also understands that this current house has quite a bit of limiting factors.
It does.
Okay.
It has a lot of great aspects to it. Like, it's such a great house that I actually never leave here. And it's a bit pathetic. I never leave the house. I mean, I could go like 4 days in a row without even driving my car. And it's not because I'm walking everywhere. It's because I just don't leave the house.
Yeah.
So I like the house a lot, but I feel vulnerable. I guess that at the end of the day, I feel vulnerable with this much equity, and there's fires and mudslides and all that kind of stuff in areas like this. And I'm just like, I don't want to lose sleep over that kind of stuff anymore.
Yeah. So unexpected events in the future could drop the hammer on you, and you're just kind of dreadfully pending when that may potentially happen.
Yes. Yes. Very much so. Dreadfully pending is a good phrase.
Yeah. I mean, that's an absolute fear that is valid. I would highly encourage you to, instead of focus on that, just focus on what the future goal is that you're trying to achieve. More peace, maybe not being over a highway, ditching the bachelor pad, which is kind of the last chapter of your life, and considering opening up to the next adventure.
Yeah.
More quiet, serene place. I mean, you can pretty much do whatever you want with the equity that you have in this home. And I think what I'm finding with a lot of borrowers right now that have mortgages at very low interest rates is they're a little emotionally attached to that. And they're failing to see that the lowest interest rate really isn't always the greatest mortgage strategy, but really developing the best strategy, knowing that it could be a short-term problem. I don't know if you plan on paying cash for the next house or if you plan on financing some, because it sounds like you have a decent amount of equity. But we only have so much life to live. And the human experience has so much to do with what we call home and the experiences that we have in that home. And it sounds like your home you love when you're there alone, you choose not to leave, but you also have your wife and the kids that are coming, and it's not really conducive to that. So do you feel like that the next adventure, the next house, wherever you choose to land, will provide a greater life experience for you and your kids, your wife's kids?
That's definitely the goal. I mean, I think you've helped synthesize what the goal is to find a place that is more conducive to this next chapter in my life and feels like home. I think that's a really important thing to me. And the fact that I don't know where that is, and that I kind of have to take the leap of faith and sell this house and then find the right place afterwards is a little scary. But that's the adventure part, right? Like, I mean, that's like the stepping into the unknown part. So yeah, I think you did a great job of synthesizing that.
Yeah. Maybe it's my age and maybe it's just getting a little bit older, but the financial investments we have can open up massive opportunities for us. And if you're just willing to keep your eye on the target, focus on what the goal is, that's part of the fun of finding the next house. It's a total blast to find out where you want to land and where you call home next, but sky's the limit for you. I don't know why you'd be so concerned about holding on to something that may not be providing the greatest joy, especially at this age of your life and this stage of your life. So as far as how you choose to make that next step, whether you choose to pay cash or finance it, have you even considered what your plan is there? Because
I think that
there's a financial burden on the current property you have.
I think it would be wise to finance some portion of the next acquisition with a very hefty down payment. I don't want to take on a bigger mortgage than is necessary. I just would want to maximize my write-off capabilities.
Totally understand. What would be really fun to show you, though, is we put together a total cost analysis for all of our borrowers. It's a pretty robust financial presentation that will detail for you when you have large sums of cash like this and you're considering a very large down payment, how are we able to grow your wealth and maximize that wealth over time? Some people think they just want to pay cash for a home, and that's not always the greatest long-term financial benefit, but really diversifying where you take the proceeds from the sale of California and what you choose to do with that. We typically wrap in your financial advisor if you have one. If you don't have one, I would love to connect you with a trusted advisor that I have and really see how we can take the proceeds from California and grow the most maximum wealth over a certain period of time. So whether we invest it in one avenue, put some in the house, maybe dump a little bit of liquidity into like a high yield savings or something like that. But the goal is to make sure that we're hitting your financial needs on the future payment, that it feels doable for you, but also growing your wealth. How far off are you from retirement? Like, how much longer do you want to work or foresee yourself working?
I don't, first of all, I do have a financial advisor. So thank you for the offer. Secondly is I was fortunate enough at a much younger age to actually retire for a period of time and learned a lot from that experience, which is that life is about expansion and creation. So I don't foresee myself retiring, quote unquote, anytime, maybe ever, but certainly not in the near future. But I do want to have the freedom to work the schedule that I want to work and to do the things that I want to do. And that's what, downsizing a little bit and having a little bit more liquidity in my bank account just gives me the peace of mind at night when I look at my cash flow from my investments versus my expenses. It just feels like now I'm really free to do whatever I want. Like I can choose into anything. Right. And it doesn't really matter as long the only thing that matters is that I'm doing what I love doing.
Yeah. That freedom is an absolute beautiful thing to have. And one of the common things that I do ask my clients when they're trying to decide where to invest or how much to loan on the next property is consider this question. You don't have to have an answer to it right now, but maybe consider having a conversation with your wife on what is going to make you sleep the soundest at night. Is it low payment? Is it liquidity? Is it having the right financial investments? And I would encourage you to have that conversation with your wife. And then let's kind of work into this backwards on the payment that you want to have and the potential cash flow from distributions that you could have if you invest, and find that perfect sweet spot for you where you guys are comfortable on cash flow versus liabilities.
Beautiful. Let's hit timeout. Let's go off script here. So I want to just make some comments. First of all, fantastic job. That's the first thing that I want to say.
Thanks.
And I just want to extract some needles from the haystack here. Thought you did an amazing job of getting me into feeling what I want rather than cerebrally thinking what I want, because frankly, that's where I get locked up, is in my head of, but if I do this, then what about that? Versus what's the feeling that you want to have? What's the experience that you want to have? Bringing it back to my wife and finding that sweet spot at the end here was really fantastic, because it also serves me and displays a part of your value proposition, which is you're going to help me find that sweet spot. Referencing the total cost analysis and being able to do a robust financial breakdown. And notice for the listener here, never was rate discussed. And I think that other than my existing 2.625, which I think is also noteworthy, you kind of got me away from even thinking about that right now and thinking more about what's the ideal home that I want to be in, what's my ideal scenario, et cetera. I love the fact that you tried to convince me or subtly convince me to talk to your financial advisor, trying to tee up an opportunity for a referral to an outbound financial advisor. The one small miss, and maybe you would have circled back to it if I didn't cut it short, but there's so much more to talk about in this episode of the 360 Experience, so I didn't want to spend the whole time on me, is I would suggest that if I say to you, I have a financial advisor, that you seize that opportunity to say, wonderful, I would be more than happy to have a call with him or her. It could be a three-way call or just me calling them directly to go over the numbers with them and to help cumulatively or together figure out what that sweet spot is. Because there's an entry point there for you to get an introduction to a financial advisor.
Yep.
Really wonderful job, which I think I'm glad that we did that, Katrinka, because it really encapsulates the value proposition that you bring. We started with, why do you think it is that you get referrals from people who don't actually do a loan with you? I want to add to that too, by the way. for the listener's benefit and for your benefit, I think that at least 50% of the time, when someone does a loan, at the end of that loan, they're unhappy for one reason or another. They didn't get the rate they thought they were going to get. The fees were higher than they expected. They didn't get return phone calls as promptly as they wanted, or things that had nothing to do with the lender and they're blaming the lender for it. Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of reasons as to why people are unhappy. So if you create a lasting impression, if you show that you care, if you take the time to ask a lot of great questions like you did, connect, get a feel for what's important to me. Even if I don't go with you, I'm going to remember how you made me feel. And if I'm upset with who I did go with instead of you, and I do have an opportunity to make a referral to somebody, I'm probably going to refer to the person that I didn't go with who made me feel good. And why close that window of opportunity? So wonderful, wonderful work there. Do you have anything you want to add to that before we kind of segue a little?
That's honestly what it's all about to me. It probably started from my background in history and nursing of like first do no harm. My heart's just racing. I just care so much for people. And my focus is really on life. I feel like my purpose is to elevate people. That doesn't always mean they go with me. But if I have an opportunity to teach, educate, elevate, and let people know that there are individuals in our industry that really, truly care about their success as human beings and as a family, that they can achieve their long-term financial goals, that is really what is at the heart of me. And I have so much to give. And so whatever I need to do to help them feel from me that caring, that humanity, that my willingness to serve, I feel honored to be chosen by clients who choose to partner with me for a long time. And that's really at the heart of who I am. Sometimes I say I probably get a little bit too emotionally invested because I get those exciting nerves when they submit an offer. They call me and tell me it's accepted, and we're hooting and hollering and screaming, and I'm running around my office just feeling the same emotions with them and that excitement. But then also on the other side, feeling their fear and sensing their trepidation, sensing their pause on certain questions. And that's where I dig. How can I make you feel comfortable in this aspect of the loan? One of my biggest things is there should never, ever be a surprise when buying a home. If things change, you swallow the frog early, you call and you talk about it, and you own and run the transaction like a pro so that there isn't surprises. When somebody gets to the end, I don't have that experience, Tim, that we get to the end and 50% are dissatisfied. I have a hard time even thinking of one recently that has even been the case. I feel like I have raving fans and I create new friends. And that matters to me.
I want to comment on a couple of things that you've shared here. I'm gonna give you the second question first for you to ponder, and then I'm gonna make some comments for those listening to consider. What you described and the emotions that came up for you is that of an empath, and that is a superpower that, if catalyzed correctly, can be used to be more successful. I mean, if people feel that you care about them, then they're going to care about you. I would imagine that there are people listening that, and I used to fall into this category, for sure, when I was an originator, that just say, well, but I don't feel that way. Like, I'm doing this to make more money, and that's where my focus is. I think I fell into that category as an originator. It's interesting because, like, you're in Leadership 360. You were just in Costa Rica. If you can go back the 3 months that it was since we were there, I think that you probably would really be able to realize that, like, when I'm in that living room with all of you, at the Gottwald house and we're having our meetings, I'm in an empathic state. Like I really do care about all of you and want to serve and help you in every way that I can. And it took me having to learn that as a skill. And I think for some people it comes naturally, and for others it has to be learned. And the question is going to be like, what would you say to somebody who says, but I just don't feel that way? Before you answer that, and as you ponder that, the other thing that that I think that you have identified that is very noteworthy for everyone to really take in is, you know, at the end of the day, if we are thinking transactionally, people are going to feel it. And if we're truly serving, they're going to feel that. And yeah, I guess I'll leave it at that for now and turn it over to you, because I'll probably have more to say after hearing what you have to say. But let's go back to the question. If you could talk to me 20 years ago and I said to you, yeah, but Katrinka, when I'm on the phone with a client, I don't feel that emotion for them. Like, that's my honest truth. Like, I just want to get the deal. What would you say to me? How would you coach me on that?
Great question. I would say probably the quickest way to bring it home would be when I'm on the phone and I'm trying to advise somebody on one of the largest financial decisions that they're going to make, I actually make decisions and ask questions and guide as if that person were my brother or sister, or as if that person, like depending on their age, my mom or dad. And so when I'm thinking about, say, someone who's, approaching retirement and they don't have the young kids at home, I'm asking questions that are like, well, what's the next step for you? Like, what's the most important thing to you? Have you had the opportunities to travel? Because I'm thinking about what would have been important to my parents in that same situation versus if they're young, they're just starting to raise a family. I know what that feels like, and I know what the worries and concerns I had were on buying my first house. And so trying to give advice in a really human nature, like I don't ever think about, I had some really good advice given to me my very first year in the business. And one of the LOs I worked with said, if you always focus on the commission and the loan amount and how much you're going to make on a deal, you're going to lose the ability to truly listen and meet your client's goals. Because I can sell somebody a 5% down versus a 25% down. Which one am I going to make more money on? Like, that has never really entered my thought process. So if that's something that you think about, I would encourage you to ditch that and really just get into looking at our clients as human beings that have goals and struggles, and how can I advise them to have the greatest financial gain and wealth over time. And it can't be about me. It's never about me. It's about them.
I have a couple of things that I wrote down, so let me comment if I may. So the first thing I want everybody to understand is that you have one chance on every lead you get to make them a client for life and to make them an advocate of you. You have one chance. And it's all based upon what she's talking about. It's based upon whether you've chosen to take a selfless service approach or a selfish approach. And if you take a selfless service-based approach, you'll have at least as good of a chance of getting the loan as you would if you went the other way. But you'll have much more than that. You'll have somebody who will come back because of how you made them feel and because you displayed that you care. And they'll likely refer people to you. And what happened for me in my career, I did have, by the way, so full disclosure, I mean, I critiqued myself and said that I didn't actually think the way that you described. I couldn't actually say, I would go to a Todd Duncan seminar and I'd hear people on the stage say, I do this because I love fulfilling people's dreams of home ownership. And I would sit there and be like, roll my eyes and be like, that's bullshit. I don't feel that way at all. Like I do this to make money for me and my family. I mean, that was my truth. But what I did do really well was I did truly care about giving them good advice. I did truly care about educating them. I did truly care about making sure that they got the best loan for them, regardless of whether or not it was the most commission to me. I just didn't feel that empathic thing that you're describing so brilliantly. And I love the juxtaposition of you envision yourself as consulting with your brother or your sister. That's beautiful. Or your child or someone's daughter or son or someone's grandmother. You know what I mean? That's a really beautiful framing to insert yourself into that more empathic state. The other thing that I want to say to that is this, and this is where I evolved, was I learned, as you've pointed out, how to ask questions and listen. And it is in asking. So when I was an originator, I would take control of the conversation and I would do most of the talking. Very different from your approach of asking me a lot of questions like you just did. And I had a great system. I was really well scripted and all of that. And that's why I was successful. But I didn't have the empathy as a result. But as a coach, I've learned how to ask more questions and be present and feel. That's where empathy comes from, is listening, opening up your heart and feeling, putting yourself in the shoes of another human being and what they're going through. And that's where the connection is forged. So for the listener, if you want to cultivate more empathy, the best way to do that is to listen more and ask more questions and allow yourself to feel the person's struggle, their desires, their interests, their excitement, all of it. I mean, like you walk around the office excited for them when they get their offer accepted. And I'm sure that makes them feel like $10 million when you're as excited for them as they are for themselves. Don't
get me wrong. I have scripts, Tim. I have a natural flow to all of my calls, but I allow the call to be very natural. Okay. So a lot of times I like minimize all of the windows on my computer screens so that I don't have distractions. Sometimes I'll turn my chair and I'll look out the window because I need to truly be listening. And you can pick up on nuances of someone's voice, the hesitation, the sometimes the fear and the emotion in what they're saying. So I do have scripts and I follow a pretty natural flow, but the goal is to help them feel seen and totally like heard. So by the end of my conversation, I never start by, well, are you ready to take the next step? That never comes out of my mouth. You know what my question is? I ask all the questions I need to really like qualify somebody and understand how to structure their loan. Do we have, a viable solution for them? And then I'll say, what questions do you have? They answer. I answer it. What questions do you have? What else is on your list? What are you most worried about? And I ask, what additional questions do you have, until they have nothing left to ask me? And by then, the next question, the very last question they ask is, how do I move forward? Mm-hmm. What are next steps? Instead of me saying, come with me, they're saying, I want to move forward with you. I'm going forward with you. And then I will say, these are next steps. But I want them to want me, because by that point of the conversation, they have felt valued, they have felt heard. I know what their goals are more than just a financial transaction. I never talk about rate. I never, ever talk about terms in the conversation. We're talking about goals, life dreams, and how to get there. So the goal is to bring them along with me. And by that point, I've already showed my ability to educate, but developed that trust. And at that point, they want to move forward because I'm not salesy.
How do you deal with the rate question? Because you get it, obviously. So what's your way of handling that?
I typically do it through a TCA. So I get people on Zoom. I don't like it to be phone calls. I like to see their eyeballs because I want to see what reactions that they have. So we'll do a pre-purchase consultation as part of the pre-approval, and we'll walk through the numbers of the TCA. And I take them back to what they told me their goals were and what was most important to them, and start to show them the differences between maybe flexibility in their payment versus flexibility in their cash to close and what they can do with those funds. But you always got to circle back and keep their eyes on the target. The target was financial flexibility, low liability, those types of things. So, and people need to understand that what bothers me about our industry is I can call 10 different financial institutions, and they're going to come straight out of the gate and tell me what my rate and my payment is. Okay. The lowest rate is never the greatest mortgage strategy. Okay. I think, and consumers really don't understand that there's a dozen different ways that you can structure a loan. But what's their structure? What meets their goals? And so, yeah, we talk about rate. Yes, it comes up, but it's not combative, if you will. Do I win every loan? No. Like, can I beat the lowest rate? No. Do I talk to them about long-term value and that this is a 30-year relationship? Yes. This loan is not the most important loan in the market that we're in right now. The most important loan is the next loan, because we still have elevated rates. And so they need to have a partner that is vested in their interests to always have them in the right loan at the right time. And the only way to really do that is to get them into something right now, proactively monitor their mortgage, stay in touch with them, know what their goals are for the refinance, and capture that when we hit their strike rate.
Beautiful scripting. Beautiful scripting. And the thing it's beautiful for a couple of reasons. I mean, it's beautiful scripting because it is well articulated and strategically lined up perfectly to create value. But it's also beautiful scripting because it's said from the heart and because you believe it. And that's what makes scripting effective, is when the person can feel the authenticity and sincerity behind the words that are being delivered. And I know you, so I know how much you believe in what you just shared, which is the next loan is the one that's more important. I need to proactively monitor their indebtedness for them and find cheaper money when it's available. So I want to pivot now. I want to go back 7 years ago. What were you doing that led up to you being in mortgages?
So I was on the decline side of mortgage. I actually worked with credit challenged borrowers where LOs and realtors would refer to our team. I was in credit repair, credit restoration. So they were declined for one reason or another as it related to credit. And I ran an operations team. So I was an operations director for all the casework. So we would negotiate debts, remove debts, negotiate foreclosures, and fix what was preventing them from buying a home. So I saw the really embarrassing, shameful side and the emotions that go along with credit, because those were generally tied to life events that were very difficult to talk about. Divorce, death, loss of a job, illness. And those always resulted in some type of credit event that brought up really difficult emotions for people. And so helping them work through that, getting honest with them, and creating a plan and creating hope, really, that their dream of owning a home is real and we can do this. And I helped over 2,000 people who were declined get into homes during my time. And at that point, I was bored. I'd gone as high as I can. I couldn't grow any further. And so I got curious about, well, what does the approval side of this equation look like? So I went and I got licensed and reached out to a team that I did their credit repair for, which is the team I'm with right now. And the rest is history.
And so there's a couple of things that I want to tease out of that and the reason that I asked that question, because I already, of course, knew the answer. One is that I would imagine that as a result of being engaged with people on a consistent basis, and I know that you recently listened, because we had a text exchange, to the Brian Mahan episode. And, Brian and I talked about shame and toxic shame, and how it's a much bigger thing in all of our lives than most of us realize. You were engaging consistently with people who were in a state of shame, where they felt bad about themselves. And I would have to imagine that that was a really important catalyst training for you in having this empathic approach that you now use as an originator. I mean, you had a lot of practice at hearing people, seeing people, and talking them through their circumstances, just like you did with me in our role play a few minutes ago. The second thing that and this is more a question that I want to ask, which is, how much do you think that, if at all, that your experience in one of the elements of what I consider to be essential knowledge of this business? So, I mean, essential knowledge is everything from how to understand the financial markets. So you subscribe to MBS Highway and you learn that from Barry. How to read tax returns, loan product and how to structure deals, and credit. I mean, these are all components of essential knowledge. And you learned the credit model back and forth, 6 ways to Sunday. And how much do you think that that helped you in your level of confidence in having conversations with people when you first became an originator? Because you got out of the starting blocks really fast.
Oh, I think it played a huge role, because my past career path was a focus on goals, plan, eliminating shame, developing deep, trusted connections. So I think it was definitely a great launching point for me. It was a steep learning curve to learn guidelines and programs and income calcs and stuff like that. And if you ask my team, I'm the first to admit that I am not an income wizard. So I will stick to what my genius zone is and what I'm best at, and I will defer the rest to experts on my team. And that's okay. I don't have to be great at everything to be able to guide my clients down the right path. I don't have to be able to be a wizard at self-employment tax return evaluation.
Beautiful. Okay, next question. So when I first met you, which was close to a year ago now, I suppose, when we had our first Zoom call together, I remember one of the things that you wanted to work on was a philosophy that you had. And I'll preface by saying that our philosophies and our beliefs can be our greatest attributes, and there are blind spots to them that can make them our biggest hindrances, right? And your philosophy was that I will just outwork everybody. And I'm here we are a year later, and I'd like to chat with you about that. So, like, you're a really hard worker, and you were putting in crazy amounts of hours and gutting it out to be successful. Tell us a little bit about, where you're going with that, what you're working on, how you're working on maybe re-engineering that philosophy a little bit to have greater life balance.
Yeah, great question. I'm a work in progress, that's for sure. I am happy to report that I'm doing better than I was a year ago. Thanks very much in part to Costa Rica, learning about upper limit beliefs. Why do I drive as hard as I drive? Because I do have a bit of an insatiable drive to succeed and perform and be the best that I can possibly be. I have a difficult time taking my foot off the gas, truly. But I have learned that there is more to life than working. And one of the biggest challenges that I've struggled with is I love what I do. Like, it brings me a deep amount of satisfaction and integrity, and I can lay my head on my pillow at night knowing that I gave it my all and I provided a ton of value to elevate everyone I communicated with that day. So knowing that I get that emotional payoff and that I love working. And most of the time when I am working, it doesn't feel like work. Like Tim, you said, when you're in your genius zone, what is the activity that you can do for hours on end and you realize, oh, that just felt like an hour and a half and you'd been at it for 4? That is a very common experience I have. So when I feel that amount of satisfaction working, it can be difficult to separate it when I need to turn it off and walk away from it and spend time with my family. But the only way that I'll ever find that separation and the balance that I'm seeking is to find the exact same satisfaction and joy and experiences in creating those moments with my family, with my husband, and really me. Costa Rica and L360 has put like a spotlight on my relationship with me and finding joy and activities outside of work that just feed me and make me feel super happy. And so that's the work in progress. And I'm doing much better at finding balance with that. But I do find myself leaning towards my old tendencies of never taking my foot off the gas because I got a family to support. And I've got assets and investment properties that are important to my retirement that I need to support and sustain. And I've got a team that I have a responsibility to perform for them because they have the same in their lives. And so am I a work in progress? Yes. Am I doing better? Yes. Am I finding opportunities to put my health a priority? Hell yes. And doing very, very well at that, which is something I've ignored for many years. And one of the goals that I had a year ago that I told you was, like, I always set personal and professional goals ever since I've been in mortgage. I always nailed my professional goals and I never, ever hit my personal goals. And that was like an eye-opener to me that I was always putting myself last. And I couldn't do that anymore because my health was like blaring, front and center. You have issues. And if you keep down this path, you won't be working because you won't even be here. And so life events like that can kind of slap you in the face. My advice is don't let it get that far before it slaps you in the face and you start having health challenges. But I still love what I do and I love my family. So.
Yeah. Well, first of all, you look great. I mean, the difference in just your skin as an example is dramatic from a year ago. So congratulations on, the hard work and the dedicated work that you've been doing to your health and well-being.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The interesting thing, you referenced, uncovering your genius and what is the thing that you can do to where, 1 hour seems like, or 3 hours seems like 1 hour. I almost said it the opposite direction, where time kind of stands still. That's an element of it. However, sometimes the things that we're really good at or that give us that jolt of gratification can become an addiction. And we can get out of balance as a result of going to that well too often to get our fulfillment. And as we get older, we get into our ruts and routines, and this is a part of, kind of why I feel like I need to go out on this adventure of home. Where am I going to live? Right. It's like when we're younger, we adventure and we try new things all the time. And therefore, as a result of trying new things all the time, we oftentimes have more balance in our life because we're engaging in a variety of different activities. Then as we get older and life gets so serious, we go to the tried and trues that are going to, make us money or give us the satisfaction of feeling like we've accomplished something. And before we know it, we're in this rut of doing the same things and we ignore the other things that are important to us. And I've seen it now for a very long time. I'm my own laboratory experiment, of course. All of this stuff happens in my life as well. But, I've now going on our, 12th year of doing Leadership 360. I've seen enough people that come through the program that are at a stage in their life to where they're financially successful, but they're unhappy or they're unhealthy or they don't know their family, or they don't know themselves, and they don't play in a softball league anymore, or they don't do pottery like they used to, or they don't play their guitar anymore. And, a part of the process of finding balance in our life is identifying with holistically, what are all the things, not just our work, that bring us joy, and committing to engaging in those things on a bit more of a consistent basis so we don't have regrets. I was thinking about this the other day. I actually have it in my email. I haven't done anything with this, but I had this thought in a meditation of, at the end of our life, we're either going to be grateful or regretful. And like, I don't know about you. I mean, I think I could probably speak for you. It's like, when I'm ready to take my last breath, the memories that I want to have are that of gratitude for all of the beautiful things that I got to experience, and to be able to say to God, thank you. Thank you for all those people that you put into my life. Thank you for all those great experiences. Not, fuck, I wish I would have done this. I wish I would have done that. When I looked at it through that lens in my meditation, it like really like hit me hard. Like, oh wow, like, you be careful of the choices that you're making. This isn't a dress rehearsal. This is the show.
Yeah.
We're on right now. Okay, we went a little deep there. Let's
Good.
Let's go.
So good though.
Let's go. Thank you. So let's go. It's the first time I actually verbalized that. I've never even told Liz about that. I actually just, when I came out of my meditation, I sent myself an email, and it's been sitting in my inbox just waiting for me to play with it. So thanks for letting me verbalize that a little bit more. What books do you read? And why? Like, what are you drawn to in your reading time?
Oh, mostly self-development, unless I get some whim when I want to be just entertained, and then you can find yourself drawn to some romance novel, which isn't bad. But most of the books that I read are like Atomic Habits, The Big Leap, mostly self-development, where I do believe that I have a very good I've got a skill of being consistently aware, going inward, if you will, and being aware of emotions and maybe bad habits, things I can do better. And so I'm always seeking out advice from others on great books that they're reading. But if you look at my bookshelf back here, they're mostly all, what can I do to have additional aha moments in my life, or put new opportunities in my life to grow and be a better human being. Mm-hmm. Because we're all a work in progress, right? But constantly having that insatiable desire to learn is fun, because I get something new from every book that it just adds a little another feather in my cap to improve my life experience and those around me.
Yeah, you and I are the same in that regard. I was always kind of the weird one. I think I still am the weird one in many ways. I was exceptionally weird 30 years ago when I would hang out at these mortgage conferences and with all these other teachers, and we would be talking about hey, have you read this book? Have you read that book? And I'd always be sitting there quietly because I hadn't read any of the books that they were reading. They were all reading, business books, and I was never interested in reading business books. I mean, I've read very few in my life, maybe a dozen total. And they'd ask me every once in a while, what are you reading? And the Autobiography of a Yogi, or Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, or, et cetera, right? Like all these like deeply philosophical and spiritual books. And recently I asked the faculty of the Loan Atlas to send their top 10 favorite books that they've ever read. So that's sum total, about 150 books that we're going to post in the Atlas as kind of a reading list, a recommended reading list, and a quick summary as to why you like this particular book, like 2 sentences, and most of them provided, business related books. But there was a fair amount of people who provided personal development books, which made me feel a little bit less like an outcast. But I think that what you're describing, Katrinka, that it's such a beautiful virtue is curiosity. You know, whether it be in business or in personal realm, just that virtue of wanting to know more, you know, being curious about what do I not know that could help me become better at whatever it is that I do. Okay, so as we start to wind this down, I suppose a question that I want to ask you that I like to ask is, if you could turn the clock back right now and have a conversation with Katrinka when she was 18 and give her some advice, what is the advice that you would want to share with her?
Stop being so serious. Like, stop trying to fast forward life to I will be happy when. Like, I've always been big on achieving and succeeding, but at what cost? You know, and I would tell that 18-year-old to just get a little wild and crazy and just have some fun, and don't ever forget joy and the people that matter to you. Because I found myself at that age just constantly driving to succeed. I moved out the summer between my junior and senior year of high school because I was convinced I was ready to be an adult and I was ready to take the next step. So my whole senior year of high school, I supported myself. I lived on my own, had a full-time job, should have graduated early, only had one class in high school, but I chose not to really be a kid while I was still a kid because I was so focused on the next thing and just driving and succeeding. And I would have said, slow down and just smell the roses and have some great experiences along the way, because life is going to come at you fast.
So with that as a backdrop, what can you commit to doing for the 18-year-old Katrinka who still lives inside of you now as an adult to give her those fun experiences?
Remember spontaneity. Like I'm kind of rigid in a plan. I think my commitment would be to find more spontaneity and turn off the fucking computer.
So there's a thing that I did when I was in school. I don't think that I ever shared this with you, but let's put this out there as a little bit of a challenge for you or for anybody else that's listening. So I too am rigid and controlled and perfectionistic and all of these things. And I was working with that in school back when I was 42 years old. And I decided that I was going to make a commitment to block a weekend in my calendar and to wake up in the morning and pack a bag that had layers, and that I would go to the airport and I would look at the departure board and I would pick somewhere to go. And I went and I watched my mind go. I saw Denver and I watched my mind go, well, the Lakers are playing in Denver tonight, so I could go to the game. And like in the weeks leading up to it, I was also like watching my mind trying to plan, maybe I should go here. Maybe. And then I kept saying, no, like it's not until you get there. Right. So I go up to buy the ticket at Southwest at the counter. Can I have a ticket to Denver, please? And she said, I'm sorry, that flight is sold out, which is perfect. So I said, well, where should I go? And she goes, what do you mean? And I said, you tell me, where should I go? And she's like, well, I have a flight coming up soon that you can get on to Albuquerque. And I'm like, great, I'll take it. So I flew to Albuquerque and then I rented a car and I just went driving and I ended up in Santa Fe. And I'm not going to get into the depths of the story, but I spent this like 3-day weekend just, completely living it in the moment to create that spontaneity that you're talking about.
Yep.
Because it's a growth edge for me, which is a part of why I kind of need to sell this house and go out on that adventure to be spontaneous and to just see like, what is what does God put in my way? Where am I meant to go?
Yeah.
So I share that with a follow-up question to you is, what commitment could you make to yourself to cultivate more spontaneity? Anything that you can think of specifically that you could do to be more spontaneous?
I think where I'm going to get the most payoff from this, family, personal, relationship wise, is to I get the most experience out of experiencing those fun things and the spontaneity with my husband. And so my commitment will be to spontaneous dates. One of the most fun things we've ever done was 2 years ago for our anniversary. We packed the truck and we planned the first night. We headed down to Four Corners area, southern Utah. We stayed a night in a yurt in the middle of Zion's. And then we just went from there, wherever the wind took us. And that was one of the most fun things I've ever done. And I don't do that often enough with him. And I honestly think that for the longevity and my happiness with him and myself and my family, that will have the biggest payoff, is committing to spontaneous dates like that instead of always so planned. Like, I don't want my relationship with my spouse or my husband to feel like I have to calendar him,
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't feel like a priority when that's the case. And so that's my commitment.
Great. When are you willing to make the commitment to do the first spontaneous date by?
Friday night. What
Cool.
day is it today? Thursday?
Today's tomorrow night.
I got time tomorrow night.
Okay. Do me a favor and text me and over the weekend. Let me know how it went.
I will. Absolutely.
Thank you so much for being on the show and for bringing your vulnerability and authenticity. I think that your role play with me was incredibly valuable. And I've never done that before with someone, to have someone like take me through their sales process. And I'm sure that people that were listening got some great ideas and some great scripting. Your scripting is terrific. And more importantly, just thank you for your presence and for the beauty that you bring to the world.
Absolutely. Appreciate the opportunity. Always. Thanks, Tim.
I'll see you real soon, my friend. Okay.
All right. Sounds good.
Thank you everyone for tuning in to the 360 Experience.